Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Maricella, how's it going today?
It's going. I've been in meetings all day, so my brain is a little overwhelmed.
I know. I've been sitting here actually taping podcasts today. I just taped 3 podcasts, and one of which, is coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's a really exciting one that I know that our listeners are going to really enjoy. It's with Simo and Tate. So we'll talk more about that later, but I feel you. It's a dreary day and we're in our homes, and sometimes that leads to some low energy moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's been really cold the last few days, and I don't do well with that. I'm done. I mean, it's April pretty much. So this shouldn't be what's happening.
I know my children are all outraged because they had a few days where they were, no coats and short sleeves. And now they wake up in the morning and they always ask, do I need thick pants, winter pants?
Right.
And I'm like, yes, it's freezing outside. Yes, it's freezing outside. So they're not happy about it.
I'm with them.
It's going to change. Change is coming. What happened with the, the groundhog? Do you know? Do you see his shadow?
I have no idea. For a moment, I thought about you were talking about the hedgehog.
Well, we love hedgehogs at Ellevate Network, but no, there's something. I guess it's more of an American thing.
Yeah. My ex-boyfriend was obsessed with the Groundhog Day tradition for some reason.
Punxsutawney Phil.
Yep, he even went up to whatever it's called to see it.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. Well, Maricella, we have had quite the week. We just are coming off of the Oscars.
Did you watch them?
I did. Yep, we did. Did you?
I did. I did not watch all of them, unfortunately. So I've missed the first part, but I did watch them. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think many of us do as well, with what happened between Will Smith and Chris Rock. And, there's a lot of nuances there. Obviously, violence, but also, just making fun of other people and the history and, the format in which this all happened. It was a lot to unpack. I saw it and then I was like, did that really just happen? Like, what's going on? And then, of course, it was all over social media and whatnot very soon after.
Right. I think that's what's bothered me, because I was the same. Like, I saw it happen and I was like, I asked the person I was with, I'm like, is that real? Or wait, is your TV like not working? Why can't we hear anything? And it took a little bit to realize that it was something that was actually happening that wasn't scripted, and they just decided to like mute the whole thing. But what annoyed me is that afterwards, that's like all that was on social media. That was like, people were not paying attention to everything else. In fact, the person I was with at that point, like, he was on his phone, stopped watching any of the Oscars, and it kind of feels like there was a lot more to go still.
Yeah, and we want to reframe this and let's, shine the spotlight, not to minimize what happened with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith and Chris Rock. And I would encourage our listeners, there was a great op-ed in the New York Times by Roxane Gay, opinion piece around this whole idea of like, it's a joke. And like, I'm going to like make a dig at you, but it's a joke and you like should just take it. And if you are unhappy about it, then, you need to calm down. You need to relax. And I wanted to call this op-ed out because it actually was a great entry point for having conversations within my own family, where particularly my husband and son, where that happens, where, there's a comment made and I will say that's not appropriate, or that's, I don't like that. And it's like, oh, it's a joke. It's a joke. And it's like, nope, that's not okay. So I do encourage all of you to read this Roxane Gay New York Times opinion piece. And I also encourage all of you to celebrate the historic wins for women at the Oscars. Let's make sure that they're not overshadowed, that we can celebrate many of these amazing firsts that are hopefully not going to be lasts.
Yeah, there were quite a few. I'm going to read that Roxane Gay article. I love her. So I already looked it up, have it on my screen currently. So we'll give it a read. I can see what you're saying about things not being okay, like jokes not being okay. Yes, sometimes it's unfortunate. I will say that you get used to it, and especially when it comes to minorities, I think that's something that we've learned to live with in a way, which is not right. But I for sure have been the type of person who was like, oh, it's a joke, okay. Or have had that directed at me, and that shouldn't be the case. So I hear that.
It should not be the case, and I'm sorry, Maricella, that happened. And yeah.
Happens to all of us at some point, I think.
It does, but it's, I think having conversations like we're having right now, and the conversations that will hopefully come out of that moment at the Oscars can create greater awareness. I think greater unity around what some of us are collectively experiencing, and progress on how we change these behaviors for good. So in light of that, we do want to celebrate a lot of the historic wins for women at the Oscars. We have Jane Campion, the New Zealand-born Australian director, who became the third female filmmaker ever and the second in a row to win Best Director in the 94-year history of the Academy Awards. She had already made Oscars history by becoming the first female director to be nominated twice in the category, having been previously nominated in 1994 for The Piano. New Zealand Minister Jacinda Ardern sent her congratulations to Campion, saying, "Thank you for once again putting New Zealand on the world stage, displaying just how beautiful our country is with her talent, her skills, and her storytelling. It's a phenomenal outcome, and I know we're all very proud of her." And I will also say that New Zealand is my favorite place in the world. It is the most spectacular place to visit. Just thinking about it makes me feel at peace. So we should all go visit New Zealand.
That's on my bucket list.
It's a good place to be there. Or it's a good thing to have on your bucket list. It's amazing. We also want to celebrate director Sian Heder, who won the night's Top Gong, taking home Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay for Coda, just her second feature-length film and the first to win for Apple. Ariana DeBose became the first queer woman of color to win Best Supporting Actress. Her acceptance speech was spectacular. If you have not seen it, please watch it. At 20 years old, Billie Eilish won for Best Original Song. And costume designer Jenny Beavan picked up her third Oscar for her work on Cruella. She also was just dressed amazingly, and it was great to see her work recognized once again.
That's exciting. I mean, there were a lot of really good wins.
Yes.
You just have to keep them coming.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I think, again, we were talking about accountability earlier in this conversation, and keep holding these, systems and structures and organizations accountable for diversity in nominees, which, then means we have to hold the movie studios accountable. We have to hold, the entire industry accountable for how we best support and amplify different voices and create opportunities for them to succeed.
One thing that was really apparent with the Oscars that I think I'd never actually thought about it, and this is my, I don't know, just privilege, I guess. But this year, there was an interpreter for certain wins, but it was because the movie, that team brought them with them. And it seems like this should be something that should be a no-brainer for everything.
I agree.
So maybe they take that up next year.
Yeah, I mean, I know in New York City, we, for all of our, government announcements and briefings and, anything televised, there's always interpreters. I mean, we see that in many aspects of, society in the world, and certainly on this stage and platform, creating a space for more inclusion would be, an obvious next step.
And I just want to say, hi, producer Megan here. My mother literally is a coda. My mother is a child of deaf adults. She was raised by a single deaf mother. And every time anyone has any kind of sign language representation and interpreter, it makes her entire world and it makes her entire day. And it really is that important. And like, she bawled when she saw the movie Coda because it was just like seeing her own life represented on screen.
I love that, Megan.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I get really passionate about deaf representation and deaf culture because my grandmother's deaf. I grew up learning sign language. I knew the sign for milk before I knew the word for milk because it's easier to teach babies sign language than it is to teach them how to talk. So that's still ingrained in my system.
Megan, thank you for sharing that. And it's these stories that, why we created the podcast in the first place, because we want to, provide different perspectives, experiences, insights on how we show up in the world and what our different experiences are. And I appreciate you sharing that because it takes something that we were talking about, having sign language interpreters at the Oscars, and makes it so human and real and relatable. And when things are human and real and relatable, they are easier to take action on and to take action with your heart. And that's something that we care a lot about at Ellevate. We are oftentimes talking about how businesses are changing and changing for good, and how the women in our community are leading the way in transforming business and ensuring that it's inclusive, that it's being good for the world, for the environment, for employees and communities. And businesses, I think, have a lot of power to use capitalism and money and resources to do better for others. And we've waited a long time to see, policies change. We've waited a long time to see statistics change. We've been waiting a long time, and we won't wait any longer. Now is the time. Coming out of the past 2 years, we are in a unique place where we don't have to go back to anything. We can move forward to the future. And so for all of our listeners, I encourage you to be that future maker in your own workplace. You have the power. You're a rising leader, manager, an executive, a business owner, a team of one, or a team of 1,000. There's small and big ways we can all show up for others, for making our business a better place. And we'll continue to spotlight some of those ways in our podcast conversations. Well, let's get to my conversation with Patricia Wooster. Patricia is the founder of WoosterMedia, which transforms leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, influencers, and thought leaders into published authors. So also a great way to share your ideas and passion and expertise. She herself is the author of 15 books, including her most recent bestseller, The Right Plan: How to Successfully Write and Publish a High-Impact Book. Her goal is to help people put pen to paper so they can inspire the world with their words. And let's get to my conversation with Patricia. Hello, Patricia. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
Hi, Kristy. So happy to be here.
So I would love it if you could kick us off by sharing a bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. I actually went to college for creative writing and psychology and planned to be a writer, but the day after I graduated college, I was told by one of my parents that I would never make a living as a writer and to go out and get a real job. And so I actually spent the first 10 years of my career in corporate software sales. So really selling to some high-level executives and ironically to a lot of the people that now I work with as a publisher. And so when I was in my early 30s, I kind of paused my career to have kids and decided to start writing again. And as most people know, the publishing industry is really difficult to break into if you want a traditional publishing deal, and particularly if you have no contacts. And so I tried my hand at writing a fiction book. It was terrible, and sent it out to a bunch of agents and had terrible luck. And so what I did was I kind of put on my sales hat and kind of went back to what I had learned working in corporate sales, which was how do you get your foot in the door to people that are hard to get to? And ironically, at the exact same time, I happened to just meet somebody who was doing some kind of work for hire children's book type projects and started kind of ideating that with her. And what she said was the most terrible job a publisher has to fill that nobody wants to do is fact checking, freelance fact checking. So I went online, I got a little certificate on how to fact check and started contacting publishers. Well, what happened was I ended up developing these really organic relationships with all kinds of publishers, everywhere from Simon and Schuster to Capstone Books, Scholastic. I mean, if there was a publisher, you name it, I was probably doing some kind of fact check freelance work for them. And so during those relationships, what I really focused on and what I really wanted to do and was interested in was personal development. And so I pitched an idea just over a conversation with an editor at Simon and Schuster when we were working on something else about a personal development book for teens. And it was a book where you took all these experts that we as corporate executives read, like the Malcolm Gladwells and Dr. Dweck and, Simon Sinek and all these people and said, what if we had this information available for a younger audience? What if we knew this when we were growing up? And so they liked that idea. And I ended up publishing 3 books with Simon and Schuster. I published 13 books before I actually went out and got an agent. And just by being a published author in Tampa, Florida, where there's no publishing whatsoever, I ended up kind of meeting all of these really powerful women, serving on boards, doing public speaking, those kind of things. And they were getting really bad predatory advice when it came to writing and publishing books. And so somebody hired me to coach them through the process. And my company was kind of born from there, WoosterMedia. And, I started really focusing on only working with either corporate executives, a lot of them who later want to exit. Maybe they want to be a consultant, start their own business, do public speaking, something else, entrepreneurs, and then ironically, athletes, because athletes all exit at some point, and most of them can't afford to retire. They have kind of a second act. And so that's where I've been focused, is really trying to bring those traditional publishing standards to everyone that wants to take their expertise and utilize it by writing a book. So that's kind of my story in the short version.
Well, I love it. And I mean, kudos to you for just your grit and resourcefulness there too. It's like, I love those stories where you see that opportunity and you go for it. You mentioned, a few reasons athletes or corporate executives who might want to write a book as, they're thinking about their future and exiting business. But I mean, why would our listeners consider writing a book? I mean, what are some of the other benefits of doing this?
Yeah, so I love this question because for me, and to me, books as a medium is we all have various levels of what I like to call earned expertise, because it's not just about like what your college degree was or exactly where you worked. We have various expertise that we pick up. So we gain it either working, or we had to get gritty and figure it out, or we read books, or we tried things, or we've had a life experience, we've gone through something. And so to me, when we talk about having some sort of legacy and being able to name and claim our expertise, a book is a great way to do that. But also the power with books too is it gives you an opportunity to build a global audience for your other products and services that you may not have access to, just by working in your community. So that's a second reason. But I also just love it too. When I look at entrepreneurs and athletes in particular, we look at a book as a foundation for kind of an ecosystem. So we're either going to integrate that book into a current ecosystem, or we're going to build a new ecosystem around it. And what I mean by that is your expertise goes into your book and creates a transformation for your reader. So they're getting kind of the what and the why of what your expertise is. And then your other products and services like digital courses, coaching, public speaking, consulting, so on and so forth. That's kind of the how, that's the higher ticket, that's the implementation. So it really gives you an opportunity to really create an impact with the right audience member by having kind of a full service product line with it, so that after somebody reads your book, they have kind of a next path to take that next step with you. So, I mean, there's just so many reasons that I like a book, but when I'm looking at it, I'm usually looking at it from a business perspective in how can we really take what you've learned in life or learned in business and give that value to somebody else in the best possible way.
What if someone's sitting here right now thinking, okay, I'm sold. That sounds really interesting, but I don't have anything to say. And I know you're talking about this like earned expertise that we all have through the lives we live and the work that we do, and that's all unique. But do you work with authors who maybe have that imposter syndrome, who think I have nothing to say or nothing new to add to the conversation?
Well, it's interesting. So when we looked at like who our audience is and kind of what are their biggest objections in general, and it comes down to three things. And it's either they say, I don't have time to write a book, or I don't know if anybody's going to care what I have to say, or I don't know how. And to me, they all kind of come into, oh my gosh, I hate to say it this way, but I'm kind of blunt, is they're all sort of procrastination techniques to not write a book. And I love what Tony Robbins said, where Tony Robbins said imposter syndrome is not really a thing. Like it's a thing that we've created to kind of define a fear. And so that is part of my job, that is like my primary job, is to really help draw that out from people and give them a real strategic plan for writing their book. Because if you were working with a traditional publisher, like if you got through the agent, you got through the gatekeeper and somebody signed a deal because maybe you're a movie star or something like that, and then you're like, okay, now what do I write? A good editor, a good publishing company, they are going to help you find that magic thing that is you, that value that you can give to somebody else. And sometimes we don't always see it, but we kind of need somebody to hold a mirror up to us to help figure that out. But I believe absolutely everybody has a book in them. That doesn't mean I think everyone should write one now. I think there's a timing thing to it as well. But we all have expertise. And so it's really a matter of kind of working with somebody maybe to help figure that out. And there's so many exercises you can do, to kind of help that process.
I'm like, my wheels are spinning right now. I've thought about, I think we've all kind of thought about like, oh, maybe I should write something. And you're right. I mean, this is kind of a procrastination. Sure. Give yourself a reason to not go for it. But once you've written a book, I know a big part of it is the promotion. How do you get the word out there? And there's like book tours or virtual book tours and speaking engagements and social media and like all kinds of steps that go into that. What has your experience been like with that?
Yeah, so it's hard because there's so many. And so the first thing I start with clients, because it really comes down to your goals. So if somebody wants bestseller, for example, they want Wall Street Journal, USA Today, New York Times, that's a whole different strategy. It's a whole different ball game, and you're really not caring about dollars, it's volume. And so that's something different. But if your goal, and then somebody else may have a goal where if I could just get 1,000 copies of my book to the right people, the people who are going to kind of go through my business funnel and may lead to, bigger opportunities or public speaking or something, then that's more important to me. So it's first understanding the goal, but also understanding that your book is like any other product. So I think we tend to romanticize books as, somebody writing in a coffee shop and, you have a PR team and it's very Mad Men, and that the publisher helps you if you're with a traditional publisher. And 99% of that is not true. And so if you instead look at your book and say, okay, my book is just like any other widget that I was going to sell. How would I sell this thing? Then I think it opens your eyes to so many other opportunities to sell and market it. One of my absolute favorite things to do, particularly, so a lot of the people I work with don't have an audience. So if they're a corporate employee, they don't often have a big social media profile, and they may not be an influencer and that kind of thing. So they're really starting from ground zero outside some family and some colleagues and stuff. And so I really like bulk sales opportunities. When you have a business book or a personal development book, you can go into a K through 12, you can go through college, you can go through business associations, huge events. All of these people are looking for stuff to give away. They are looking for it. You make their job so much easier. And this was something I stumbled upon really accidentally, because my first book out was Simon & Schuster, the one that was supposed to be like a big splash. Like the reviews were excellent and it was supposed to be my big thing. A week before it came out, the marketing person quit. And I was 100% dependent on the marketing person there. I really had not done my due diligence and I was really leaning on them. So I was stuck with nothing and I wanted another book deal. So I just created a list of, okay, what kind of events are going on? What's, mine was for kind of a high school personal development age. So I contacted the people at We Day, which they were holding those events. Like Selena Gomez was holding those events at Madison Square Garden and huge stadiums all over the world, and was able to sell a couple thousand books. And it was all through email. It was through the event coordinator. I also approached some of the largest school districts in the country, and they were buying, 500 and 600 copies of the book, because I just threw together some curriculum to go along with it. So I've done this with a lot of my clients where they go to their industry associations, say insurance or finance, whatever those big, associations that everyone belongs to, and tells them that they're an author and what events do they have going on. And they'd love to do a workshop. And the next thing they know, they've got hundreds of books being sold. So to me, that's a great strategy if you don't have an audience. There's also all kinds of like book paid promotion things for the ebook copy, where you kind of manipulate the price to get it out to a lot of people who shop for cheap books. And that's a way to kind of like, if your book's going to kind of lead into something else, you can get a new audience for yourself. But there's a lot of different ways that aren't just, hiring an expensive PR firm or something, things that you can do yourself. And I also love this idea of really kind of launching your book every quarter, coming up with a new marketing strategy that you're going to try for your book. Because, we look at books like Think and Grow Rich that have been around for years and years and years, and they're still on the top bestseller list. And that's because somebody is doing some marketing for that book. But just uploading it to Amazon and thinking that's a strategy is a disaster. You won't sell anything. So it's just really having a strategy is the biggest way you can promote your book.
Are there specific topics that are really exciting to you right now or resonating with you or the publishers?
The problem with that is by the time a topic's hot and people know about it, it's too late. So, I remember my agent telling me that like, as soon as, like the vampire type stuff started coming out, Vampire Diaries or whatever, it was too late. Like they already had stacks of those manuscripts sitting on their desks, because a traditional publisher works 2 years in advance. So they know what the trend is 2 years from now. So what I really like for business leaders is this idea now of really integrating some tactics into their book, because I think we went through this stage with personal development that was super woo-woo. And I love the mindset stuff, but it was hard to implement. And so what I'm seeing more that I think is super interesting, and it's on the self-publishing end, because outside of Hay House, when we come to like the big 5 publishers, most of the publishers, and the publishers don't really like that I say this, but they look at authors as authors. They don't see them as a 365-degree brand. And Hay House does. They build like Brendan Burchard and Gabby Bernstein, and they build brands around them. So what I like is around the self-publishing idea of, incorporating some QR codes, maybe to some like video content. You're going to start seeing things in the metaverse online. People are going to have NFTs and things associated with their books. So there's going to be limited editions. And I like the idea of kind of this interaction of people taking action when they're reading your book, because, there's two things: is the bigger the pain that you can solve for somebody, the more sticky you're going to be, and the higher value you're going to be seen as giving. And also, if you can solve any problem and give somebody a quick win in a book, then they're going to seek you out, and you have an opportunity to really develop a relationship with that person. So I think any way that you can sort of create an interaction between yourself and your reader is the best trend, as far as for a business person who really wants to use this book to kind of take them from best kept secret to kind of industry known expert.
And you've been doing this work for a while now. What gets you out of bed every day? What are you most excited about?
I'm an idea person. Like, I'm a research person. And so my favorite part of my job is that first phone call I have with somebody when they hire me, which I call a book mapping call. And it's where I pull their genius out. And it's interesting because I would say that 90% of the people who get on the call with me think they know what they're going to write their book about, and 90% of them are wrong. And so I really like helping people map out a book that creates a transformation for the reader. That's kind of my big thing. I like to be a visionary in the business. As an entrepreneur, I get caught up in the tactics as well. But what gets me out of bed is really being able to help people create books that create an impact on others, because books have had a huge impact on my life.
Yes, and I'm looking at all of my books right now, and I agree. I mean, it's always helps change your perspective on so many different things to solve a problem through someone else's eyes and expertise. And I'm just really impressed by the work you do and the impact you're having.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about you. We have this fun thing we do at the end of our interviews, asking a couple questions to go deeper on who you are. So if you could humor me, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh my gosh, I am such an introvert. And, I turned 50 this week. And when I was a kid, they called you shy. They didn't talk about introverts. And people who would know me would say, like, you're not shy. And so there wasn't a word for it. And so when, introvert came around, I was like, oh my God, that's it. Because, I get energized, like having a conversation with you right now. I'm super energized, and, I don't feel like bashful or anything. But if I get in a group, or if I had to go to a networking event and I didn't know people, oh my gosh. So with my clients, it's energizing, but there's definitely an energy flow for sure.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. What's your favorite day of the week?
My favorite day is Monday, which growing up, it was my worst, least favorite day. When I was in corporate, it was my least favorite day. I love Mondays. I have Mondays time blocked off. I don't do client calls. I don't do any calls unless it was something I chose to do. But it's really the day where I sit and get to be the visionary of the business, come up with new programs. I'm a huge researcher. And so I read a lot of personal development books and figure out ways to take other people's expertise and marry it with others and, create new ideas and concepts. So Mondays are absolutely my favorite day of the week.
I don't hear that a lot, so it is refreshing to hear. Who's your dream dinner guest?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my dream dinner guest, this is like a hard one, but right now I'm super obsessed with Robin Sharma. And it's interesting. A lot of people don't know who he is, even though he's a New York Times bestseller, but he was this really kind of a famous attorney, famous as far as very wealthy, drove Ferraris, was just like, flashy attorney. And he literally gave it all up to go to this like Buddhist temple. And he wrote this book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And at first he went and printed it off at Kinko's. His dad drove him there to print off copies. His wife, everybody thought he was crazy. And his whole thing was to try to find purpose in life. And now that book went on to become a New York Times bestseller. He's written several. The best one he has is the 5 a.m. Club. And his gift is productivity hacks for personal and professional development. He works with some of the top C-level CEOs, but he does such a great job of making sure people have a blend of, mindfulness and rest and self-care and hobbies and all those kind of things, and how it actually can contribute to being highly productive, but not being part of the hustle culture. So I love Robin Sharma. I love to pick his brain.
Do you have any pet peeves?
Oh my gosh. I have teen boys. Of course I have pet peeves. So my parents built houses when I was growing up, and it was different than it is now, where it's like these mega communities, but we were arrested development. Like we lived in the model home. So it was like when I left for school, everything had to be perfect, even under the cabinets. And so I cannot tolerate clutter. Like clutter drives me insane, because I just grew up in a way that our house always looked like the model home. So I would say that's the biggest one. And like I said, with teen boys, it's almost impossible. But yeah, I would say that. And also the other one too is, and this kind of comes from my corporate days of being kind of this young female in mostly a male driven career, which was enterprise software sales, is you see a lot of bad behavior, bad manners. And, we did a lot of whining and dining and stuff. And it's a huge pet peeve of mine. I'm originally from the Midwest, where manners are kind of a big deal. And so I think how you treat everyone is such a core value of mine. So that can be a really big pet peeve.
I like both of those. I also do not like clutter, but did not grow up in a model home. I think I just grew up with a mom that had a lot of knickknacks. And so now I'm like, I don't know knickknacks, like nothing.
Yeah, none.
What's a final thought you want to leave with our listeners here today?
I think the biggest one is that, the thing that I'm seeing a lot, and I think so much social media contributes to this a lot. And I spend a lot of time on the social audio app Clubhouse, where it is pretty much experts talking all day long. And I see this trend right now of people feeling like they have to justify their expertise. And so many of the bad self-published books that you see, and many of them are written by people that if you knew them, they're such respected, amazing people. Their LinkedIn profiles are immaculate. They're the nicest people on the planet. And you get their book and it's like they vomited up all their accomplishments, their LinkedIn profile, everything in the front of the book, almost like they had to justify why you should even listen to them. And I'm seeing this trend a lot, on Instagram and Clubhouse and LinkedIn, of us feeling like we have to justify, who we are before, we can call ourselves an expert. And I'm really a firm believer that, kind of going back to this term I said before, is that everyone has earned expertise. And it's a combination of your expertise that maybe you've gotten through work or education with your experiences, and then your unique perspective. And if you can combine those three things together, you have something that's worth people listening to. And so my final thought to people really is to start looking at yourself as an expert. And then for your legacy is start figuring out how you can share that with the right people. Because, what I say quite often is right now, somebody needs the words that you have yet to write. And, get it out there and share it with people, but don't feel like you have to wait until you've arrived before you can be considered an expert.
That is an excellent way to end this conversation. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us on the Ellevate podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Patricia. And we have certainly enjoyed our conversations here with you today. Maricella and I are still talking about the Oscars and all the great stuff happening in the world. And we like to highlight that, of course, with our History Makers section and, talking about the work that Ellevate does. We want to especially highlight our Ellevate Her Forward Fellowship. Maricella, could you share a bit more about that?
Of course. So Ellevate Her Forward is a fellowship granting fund we created a few years back. Actually, we created it in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this would be the third year, crazy enough, that we are doing it. And what we do is people can donate to the fund any amount. There's no minimum. And we match those donations to then give access to Ellevate and to a learning platform from Skillsoft called Principio to our fellows. So people apply to be a fellow and then they get access to both Ellevate and Skillsoft. And that way they have a sounding board of incredible women through the network that can help them figure out what's next for them, help them get ahead in their goals, make introductions. A lot of these women are looking for jobs. The fellowship was started for the millions of women who lost their jobs or got furloughed due to COVID-19. And to this day, we still know that there are 1 million women who still haven't re-entered the workforce. So our hope is that we can help them with that community, with those introductions, and with some more tangible skill building from Skillsoft to empower them to find what's next in their career, find a career they love, a job they love, and make it easier to re-enter and come back to where they were. So that's what we're doing. There's still time to contribute and to apply. So if you've been affected, if you currently need that support, please apply. And if you are able to give some money, please do so. Every single cent goes back to giving access to these amazing, amazing fellows. And we do have already a bunch of people who've applied, and we have not covered the amount we need to fund them all. So please, please, please contribute. And you can find all that information at ellevateherforward.com.
Excellent. At Ellevate, we're helping women to be the leaders and change makers we know we are, and providing the connections, support, advice, and inspiration that helps us along the way. So upcoming roundtables on Tuesdays at 1 Eastern. We've got our executive roundtable where you'll know your worth and demand others pay its value. That's very important as we just passed Equal Pay Day. Rising leaders will be talking about aligning your purpose and career. Career Changers Roundtable, we'll be talking about preparing to ask for the raise you deserve. So clearly we've got a good theme going on here. Our Entrepreneurs Roundtable is going to be covering self-care that sticks. And our New York City Rising Leaders will be focused on nailing your first manager role. So lots of great stuff here, from getting what you're worth, aligning your purpose and career, self-care, and nailing that first manager role. If any of these and more are keeping you up at night, then we're here to provide the support and advice you need. And we're here every week. So please continue to come back.
Absolutely. It's a great space.
It is. All right. Let's talk history makers. You want to kick us off, Maricella?
Sure. Ariana DeBose became the first openly queer woman of color to win an acting Oscar.
Megan McCluskey became the first woman to be named police chief of Sussex County, New Jersey.
Christine Crowley was sworn in as the first woman and first openly LGBTQ plus person to serve as fire chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department. Last week we heard a lot of Californias, so this is cool.
Yeah, go California. Jada Davis became the first Black woman to be selected as Miss Milwaukee.
Alexis Hopkins became the first woman to be drafted as an on-field player for a U.S. professional baseball team.
All right. And Rochelle Ambiu became the first Black woman to become deputy warden at Louisiana State Penitentiary, the largest prison in the state.
These are some great, great firsts.
It always gives my heart a little squeeze.
I know.
Love.
Me too.
And next week, we'll be chatting with Simone Tate, the founder and CEO of Poppy Seed Health, an app that transforms care for pregnant and postpartum people with on-demand 24/7 access to midwives, doulas, and nurses. So we'll see you back here next week.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ElevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.